This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
It's official. Donald Trump, a convicted felon guilty on 34 counts, delivered in a New York courtroom. Our group chat roundtable is back in this special episode of Real Talk as we determine and discuss, will it be the White House or the Big House for Donald J. Trump? One of our panelists, Katherine O'Neill, is already outraged that I have stolen her line in my introduction before I've even introduced her to you. A Bush League move on my part, but effective nonetheless. Plus, we're going to look back at my conversation with author Andrew Lawton yesterday on Pierre Poilievre. Can the Trudeau Liberals bounce back against this guy, or is it a done deal? We asked you how you felt about smartphones in schools. We've got 3 parents on our round table today. A couple of them have kids that are school-aged, and one of them has kids at a school that has just implemented that ban. So we'll go there. Plus, the Flamethrower, presented by our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Y'all are fired up, so we're going to get to your emails to talk@ryanjesperson.com. This conversation's happening with the support of Alberta's top real estate school. That's Rello at rello.ca, where better real estate training starts. If you're thinking of a career in real estate, you love the idea of unlimited earning potential, working for yourself, helping people find or sell that perfect home, look no further than Rello. They've got the best success rate in the province because of their online instructors, a ton of experience, available whenever you need them. The pre-licensing courses are huge for Rello students, plus their high exam pass rates. You want to go into this thing with confidence as you kickstart your career, and why not save a few bucks along the way? The promo code Ryan100 is going to knock $100 off the Alberta commercial and residential real estate bundles. That's Ryan100, all one word, when you get started today at rello.ca. As we welcome back to the Real Talk Roundtable, I think people are familiar with the concept. This is a real-life group chat, members of. We come together, we go on the record with Jenny Adams, who's the president at the Adams Agency, Katherine O'Neill, former journalist and the CEO at the YWCA of Edmonton, and Edmonton City Councillor Sarah Hamilton. It's nice to see the 3 of you, and I'm sorry that I stole your line. You said it as you walked into the green room, and then I just subconsciously noted it and said I'm taking that for myself.
It'll teach you.
I will teach me. I'll have to stay quiet.
Keep your best lines to yourself until we're on air.
It's true. So Donald Trump, in a defiant statement, says the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. That's Election Day. He says, I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. He may be guilty on 34 counts. He may not be able to vote himself or own a firearm, but he can still become president again.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think we all probably agree that, I mean, Trump, this probably works well for him, right? It probably works well in this, you know, the judicial system is rigged. The electoral system is rigged. That's all he has been saying. So I think this angers his base massively. If he goes to jail, you know, a friend of mine said he's probably going to raise so much money if he goes to jail. So he probably doesn't mind a couple months, you know, in the slammer. To help with it.
A lot of people yesterday were like, finally good news, you know, and I think somewhere someone called it sort of this Trump bomb, and I was like, I'm waiting for the shockwaves because the amount of outrage, I think that a lot of people are watching internationally to see how people in the heartland respond, like how his base responds, because I think, as Jenny highlights, you're calling into question the premise of the entire justice system. And if you're eroding the foundation of your country and your culture, people are fine to fight that. They're absolutely fine to fight that. And it makes me very nervous what that means for peace.
You're calling into question like the very tenets of democracy. Like
Absolutely.
The whole thing is now at stake here, and we called this, like, last time we gathered, it was in December, and we were talking about 2024, and we knew that these court cases were going to be really important to kind of tell us what was going to happen next. And this is going, I'm like you, the shockwaves are ascending, going through the country and around the world. And it's going to be really hard to tell where this all lands, but I think it ends in tears. Like, I don't see this ending well. I think he wins the election. I think this helps him. It energizes his base in a way the swing votes are, the polling is showing before this that he could likely win. And I don't think this verdict yesterday changed any of his base's mind about who he is. It's not like he was some angel and then got convicted. He's been framing this the whole time. So,
But it's the center and it's the independent, right? So my son and I have been following along on the New York Times Daily podcast, their court reporter,
Great
Jonah
podcast.
Bromwich.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
it's
good.
awesome.
And so he said today or yesterday, whenever they recorded it, that he really feels like this election is going to be the law versus Donald Trump. So the people in the middle and those independent voters are going to be deciding, do I vote for the integrity of the law? Which was exactly what you just said.
totally. But then they can vote for that third party Kennedy vote if they have that on their option in the ballot. And that only helps Trump as far as swing. It's not, they're showing in the polling, it's not, none of these votes are going to Biden. They're not coming back to him. And so that's this election. You think just logically, it looks like, how could this guy? And then no, I think this put him over the edge. Yesterday was a really important day, and I think this is how he wins.
Johnny, I'm going to go to that George Conway clip in just a second. If you want to tee that up, KO, I feel like maybe I just want to make sure that we don't like speed past something you just said. You said I think he wins the election.
Oh,
like
I
you're
have
making your
thought
prediction. You've made up your mind.
I
That's
have
where it's
thought
going,
since January that he wins. The poll, if you read the polling, the swing voting, you're really, because this is going to come down to a few thousand votes, just like last time. That has not changed. So this is so in the weeds on the votes. And if you look at the states where it's still in play, it's frightening to see what's happening. And like I said, energizes his base. It brings the money back in. He had a fundraising lull, and I thought, okay, that's going to help. But this just helps him more. And I mean, you can be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, because
polling is polling, right? Because I've seen the exact opposite polling, where like the GOP and the base of the Republican Party have a problem with Trump being convicted, and some polling says, well, they're going to find a new candidate. Now it changes every single day.
It matters only in the swing states, Jenny. The general polling doesn't matter. It does not matter. Who cares? It's a few swing states where decides the electoral college and decides the presidency. And
I don't know
now
if you know this about Catherine, but she has very strong opinions.
I have very
that
strong
she is
opinions,
right.
and I am very. This one, I'm watching the polling, and you're watching. Nothing changed because he's been saying this was rigged the whole time. It's not
Totally.
like this
He set the
happened
stage.
yesterday. Yeah,
he knows he's a liar.
He framed it perfectly. So this just was like, oh wow, it is rigged. This poor guy.
Yeah,
so he's a martyr.
I don't know if you guys heard George Conway on CNN yesterday, but I pulled just a clip of it, and this kind of speaks to like the victim complex, the martyr thing. So here's George Conway on CNN. We'll just get that audio loaded.
If you don't want to be found guilty of falsifying business records and as a felony, don't sleep with the porn star. Don't lie about it. Don't pay her off. Don't cover up the payoff. Don't cover off the payoff in the middle of a presidential campaign where you're making an illegal contribution, and don't roast the guy up for taxes who used as the front man. If you don't want to be held liable for rape like Donald Trump has, don't grab the woman's genitalia. If you don't want to be held liable for defaming the woman that you raped, don't keep lying about what you did and calling her a nut job. If you don't want to be indicted for overthrowing the Constitution, don't start a self-coup. If you don't want to be indicted for stealing classified documents and obstructing justice, don't take the classified documents. When the government asks for it back, give them back. If the FBI serves you with a search warrant, don't hide the documents, and don't lie about it, and don't have your lawyers lie about it. This isn't that hard.
So that's George Conway on CNN. By the way, to his credit, and that gets more and more heated. You can find the full clip online. Him and a Republican strategist going back and forth. Like the temperature skyrockets. That's familiar territory for George Conway, of course. But no notes in front of him, just rattling off, scandal after scandal after, implication you might think, or, all of these types of scenarios. And yet, arguably more popular now than before. I don't know if you read big picture into what that says about the United States, or what that says about the state of the Republican Party, or...
We knew everything that he just said. So something that I come back to is the scandal fatigue here. Like with Trump, it's been one thing after another, and you forget the last thing because the next thing is so outrageous. And then after a certain point, you just stop listening. You just stop paying attention. And because there's so much back and forth over what actually happened, and I think that this speaks to sort of what happens in the larger media landscape, to be honest, people just tune it out because they can't make sense of it, and it all sounds outrageous. And so you gravitate, I think, to what sounds credible to you. And that is increasingly formed by what people in your social circle think, and increasingly formed by what your own ideology is.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of people that are just like, they're just not going to vote for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Right? They don't
Well,
want Joe
I mean,
Biden to be
if there was a
president.
clear-cut candidate on the other side, I think it would definitely help. Unfortunately, Biden has his own issues with his age.
I kind of agree with Catherine. Even if Joe Biden wins in November, Trump wins. Like there's no way through this I can see where like the American people wake up and say, wow, this guy was terrible.
But what do you mean if Joe Biden wins, Trump wins?
I mean that if Joe Biden wins in November, a second term, Trump, it feeds into the narrative that the system is against the mass. I mean, the guy started a coup. The president started a self coup, and that is not that does not resonate with people. I think at the level
it's
should
all
or
become
could.
white noise, which is wild. Like how stuff like this becomes white noise.
Yeah.
All of the things you just said, all of the things he just said, people have just absolutely tuned it out, and it's already baked in the cake. They don't think Trump's a good person. No one does. So it's
That's not true. Lots of people think
no,
he's
but
a good
as far
person.
as nobody, but even their side, he's
Lots
not.
of people think he's amazing.
Yes,
Yeah,
I know
Messiah.
a few of them.
But I mean it in the way that it's like, if he has shenanigans on the side, they don't care. They're willing to forgive him. So he has a lot of grace in a way other politicians don't get. Just don't have that kind of runway. I misspoke there as far as people love him. You love him or hate him, but not many people think he's an angel.
Yeah.
And that's what's been baked into the cake.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
He doesn't have, or he has the grace because he's never legitimized the system.
Yes.
He's never legitimized any system.
It's a strategy.
It's a strategy. So you only get hit by a system that you only take body blows from a system you've legitimized.
well, and the
he's
trust
never
in-
legitimized the law. He like his own personal relationships. He's never legitimized.
And that's why everything's so dangerous right now.
Well, because the trust in media is at an all-time low,
Yeah.
and he has taken that and he's made it even bigger of a thing. Polarization sells, right?
Yep.
And so we don't trust it. And you know, we hear these stories, we hear what he says, it gets fed into your algorithm on your social media. All you're hearing is the exact same opinions over and over and over and over again. And now in your community, you've met this, likely group of people that agree with you. So you think that everything that you say is right. And this is the problem with media these days and why our world is so polarized, right? It's a business model that's dying, and it has massive implications if you can control it. And so even and I know we can't speak about this, Counselor, but with our 15-minute community situation
we'll
that's
go
happening.
there.
Okay,
Yeah.
then I'll
Well,
leave
we're
it.
gonna
I'll
come
leave
back.
it.
The counselor can't
The
comment
counselor
on
can,
it,
but we can. Okay.
yeah.
Or is that it?
Oh, I
Sorry.
didn't need to step
I
on-
thought you were
no,
interrupting me.
no.
All I was saying is he is repeatedly denied that anything that he has done is wrong, right? And that the media has taken it and they've run with it, and they've run with some of these clips and everything because it's great for the business model, and it's just taken on another life.
Hang on a sec, because I'll be honest with you. I was referring to my notes as you were developing a thought there.
Okay.
What do 15-minute cities have to do with
The
crisis in media?
the
have to do with Donald
conspiracy
Trump?
theories, the conspiracy theories that take on a
Got
life
it.
and run,
Right. Yeah.
right, and why that happens.
So people
in
that
this
think
day
they're
and
going to be
age.
fenced into their own
Yes,
communities.
it's because everybody in their algorithm is saying the exact same thing. Because
Yeah.
once you start clicking on it or commenting on it, now it's showing up over and over and over again, right? So that's how we start to believe that the things that we believe are the only opinions that are out there, because we're not exposed to any other news media, because our algorithms only show us what we want to see.
And people just don't trust anyone anymore. So who do you trust? The people closest to you. So therefore, if you're seeing it in your algorithm, you're seeing it amongst your friends, you're like, okay, I can trust this. And that's, again, with no media, and even if you have media, people don't trust. They trust the people they want to trust now. They don't even
There's
trust.
always been mistrust with media
Yeah.
since the dawn of time,
Yes.
right? But before it was like 3 white guys sitting in an editorial room deciding what news that we were able to consume, right? It's like, think Mad Men.
Yes.
And then now it's evolved so much that there's no real gatekeepers. Those newsrooms were the gatekeepers of what we understood. Now everyone is a journalist, and there's no kind of rules and regulations. So it can be the Kaler Betts of the world or whoever who decide that they are an authority. Sorry, Ryan, an authority. You're going to get a lot of clicks on this now on a subject matter, and that takes on the life and it runs with it, right?
Yeah.
It's a really broken system, and I'm really, really worried about it.
In defense of Ryan, I don't think media
you don't
is
have to
dying.
defend
we have
me.
to defend
No.
Ryan. Are we
No,
here
we're-
to
no,
I
we're-
mean, I don't think
we
media
are,
is
we're,
dying.
We're not.
Yeah.
We are technically by definition media, but we're not who you're talking
No,
about.
traditional
Yeah.
media.
No,
No,
we're the next phase. We're the future is now kind of idea, but we're doing what would not have been possible before. This would cost $30 million to set up before if you could get a broadcast license, right? If let alone be able to have distribution channels, let alone have audience be able to stream you on demand anytime, yada yada yada, and to be able to monetize it in different ways. This is the future. The future is now. But if you don't understand the future, that's why, that's why the newspapers, it's why big TV networks, it's why talk radio on the AM dial is going the way of Blockbuster Video before them, because they didn't understand how to adapt. And there's a lot of people making a lot of money that are in charge of those decisions.
Can I go back though to who around the table thinks Trump's going to win in November?
I think he's going to win.
think he's
Do
gonna
we all?
win.
Are we all pretty
Yeah.
okay? Because I was like, am I? When you
No,
last said, I was thinking.
No, but you just put it on the record, and I want it to be clear. Are you calling that he? You know what? Actually, I'm gonna kind of I jumped in, and then I'm gonna jump right back out of the pool and sit on the side for a second and sip on my coconut
I would
tequila,
say that's how it's
because
trending.
I'm gonna say I think it's very possible. I'm not gonna call a
yes.
Trump win right now,
Yeah.
but I would not rule it out at all.
And that's where I am too. I think I'm going to call that back too.
You know
I'm
what? No way.
trending.
No way.
I'm trending.
You
I'm
said
trending.
you called it in January.
I only
You're
make
stuck
calls that
there.
I am very confident in.
Catherine,
Okay,
you're stuck.
I'm calling that Pierre Poilievre is going to win the next election. I'm very confident
Wow.
in that.
Okay. Interesting.
But also, I on the record called that Jim Prentice was going to win in 2015,
So
and he
great.
definitely
Thanks
didn't.
for that,
So he
Ryan.
definitely didn't.
Let's
Oh, were
leave
you
that.
working? Were you working on that?
I'm sorry,
campaign?
we're all three
oh,
of
were
us
you
there.
were you a candidate, Catherine, in that
That's-
campaign? There's a lot of political experience around this table, including an incumbent city councilor right now. That's Sarah Hamilton, Katherine O'Neill, and Jenny Adams with us. Rick Wilson chimed in on this as well. And we're talking about where does Trump go from here? He can obviously still campaign. He will still campaign. He will still appear in the debates. Like you said, the fundraising will continue. For those of you that don't know, you probably do if you listen to this show, but Rick Wilson is one of the founders of the Lincoln Project. So when he speaks, people listen. And here's kind of a snippet of what he put out, the implications of this guilty verdict.
Donald Trump will come out of this and he'll make every lie in the book. And unfortunately, a lot of folks in the media will not correct the immediate scale of the lies. They will not correct and say, oh, Donald Trump, when he says that this is Joe Biden in the White House doing this, is lying. He is lying because he does that for a living. A lot of people will say it doesn't matter, that nobody cares about this. I think there is a shift happening now. There are now people who have to look at Donald Trump and say, he's a felon. He's a criminal. He can't vote. He can't own a gun. This guy just lost his rights in a trial that was held in a courtroom where the evidence on both sides was presented. Donald Trump chose not to call certain witnesses that he could have called to defend himself, and he chose not to testify. He chose not to use the advice of counsel defense. He chose all those things, just as he chose to commit the crimes that led him to being a felon. A felon. Donald Trump's a felon. Again, he can't vote. He can't own a gun. His rights have been restricted not because of Joe Biden, not because of the deep state, not because of the DOJ, but because of one man, and that's Donald Trump.
That's Rick Wilson from the Lincoln Project with a bit of a perspective check.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting if you have been paying attention to the trial just to see the defense's strategy here, because Donald Trump had a gag order throughout the entire case and he couldn't say anything. But he almost, you can tell, used his counsel to become the attack dogs that he couldn't be. Attacking Stormy Daniels, saying he never slept with her. Attacking Cohen, attack, which really set him up for all of these kind of the prosecution, was able to kind of trip him up because those were his only kind of 2 points. And that failed for him in the justice system. It works in the public. It works at the media. It works in his politics, but it didn't work in the justice system. So he really beat himself with his own strategy that didn't work.
Okay.
In the short term, though, like in the long term, who knows? And that's why, again, it's all up for debate right now. The justice system, democracy, everything, all of these things that have been foundational to who we are as countries, how we live, how we rule of law. No one's above things, and here we are. We're here. We all of this is at stake and on the ballot in November.
But there are people that believe that or have believed it even before.
We're agreeing. I'm just saying it's all on the ballot in November. Like, it's not just Trump and Biden. It's democracy. It's our justice system. All of these things. Do we believe these things anymore?
I want to remind you that the court of law and the court of public opinion are two different things.
Thank you for the reminder. Thank you for the reminder to us. But carry on.
That's how we are so, our group chat's so much fun.
Eaten alive.
Yeah,
in
it's eaten
5
alive.
seconds.
Go.
I'm just that cartoon skeleton right now. Anyway, from a justice perspective, and I want to Cone is Cone? No,
Cohen.
Sorry, George.
Oh.
Who do we just see?
Conway.
No, the other
Rick
one.
Wilson.
Rick Wilson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, he is correct in that all of these things are true. It was a poor defense strategy from a legal perspective, but I don't think that's the crowd he's playing to, which is what we've been saying all along. Mm-hmm. And it further serves to delegitimize the justice system. And that, to me, this is the thorn in my craw personally, that whether it's left or right, there is a continuous undermining of the justice system in contemporary politics. Mm-hmm.
I've got Egg here in the live chat that says Egg is going on the record calling that Pierre Poilievre is going to lose the next federal election in Canada. So, Egg, I wanted to give you that clip. You can grab that time code and share it with your friends. You're there on the record. And Acute Awareness in the live chat says, I want Jesperson to have skin in the game for his Pierre Poilievre prediction. If Poilievre loses, I want Jespo to wear one of those Trudeau riding a unicorn sweaters. Dude, I would wear that sweater anyway, no matter what, 100%. Size large, and we're easy to find. When we come back, I want to play a little bit of my conversation yesterday with Andrew Lawton, his take on Pierre Poilievre and how it landed with you. The new book is out right now, Lawton's new book, Pierre Poilievre, A Political Life. KO is calling BS on one of the stories. I want you to put that in front of the audience and see what they have to say about it. Conversations on Real Talk are made possible by partners like Athabasca University that understand there are a lot of barriers that can stand in the way of people achieving their post-secondary goals. Sometimes it's geography. Sometimes it's your schedule. You're looking after your kids or your parents. You got a full-time job. Maybe you got health issues. Maybe you have an opportunity to, travel the world. You're going to be going away in the middle of the semester and you can't fall behind. Well, at Athabasca University, one of the advantages there is that you select your path. You plan out what your studies are going to look like. They're affordable, they're comprehensive, and of course, they're all delivered online. So your only commute is to your device. Check out this alumni testimonial from Sherry Braun. She got her BSc just last year. Congratulations, Sherry, at athabascau.ca. She says, I chose AU for the flexibility, the ability to study from home. She wanted to be there for her daughter. You can learn more about Athabasca University online at athabascau.ca. If spring cleaning for you is going to involve a new project around the house, maybe you're finally going to get that dream closet. Maybe it's a pantry that you'd love to see built out, a mudroom. Maybe that second bedroom's doubling as a home office. You could really use one of those really cool Murphy beds. Check out californiaclosets.ca. That's where you can request your free consultation with their design team. Doesn't cost you a cent to hear about the solutions that they can cook up. We've been through that process ourselves. I will tell you, nobody better in the business than California Closets. And of course, all of these projects, they work with your budget, and it comes with a lifetime warranty no matter what. It's custom designed to fit your exact situation, all things considered. Free consultation can be booked online at californiaclosets.ca. And a shout out to our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy. They have the We're Hiring sign up. They've basically cemented it to the wall because they're always hiring at Kubi Energy. They've got that brand new field office in Lethbridge, Alberta. They've just opened a beautiful HQ in Calgary. Of course, they're in Kamloops, BC as well. That's where they're running their West Coast operations out of, and proudly founded in Alberta's capital city of Edmonton. Kubi Renewable Energy is Western Canada's fastest growing solar installer, and they're looking for talented professionals. Could be you. Check out the careers link today at kubienergy.ca. Hanging out with City Councillor Sarah Hamilton, CEO of the YWCA of Edmonton, Katherine O'Neill, and Jenny Adams of the Adams Agency. And pretty interesting conversation with Andrew Lawton yesterday, former radio colleague of mine, now with True North. Obviously, I don't know if you say right wing, but like he's definitely a big C conservative political commentator. So he's written this book on Pierre Poilievre, A Political Life. There was one, I mean, a lot of interesting things with Andrew, and I'll ask you about them. All three of you caught the interview, I know. But when he started stacking up Pierre Poilievre to Stephen Harper and their popularity in Calgary, I went, ooh, interesting. Because not a lot of people come for Stephen Harper in Calgary, if you know what I mean. But Andrew Lawton dug into it and kind of gave us what he perceives to be the recipe for Pierre Poilievre's secret sauce. Check this out.
I look at the rallies, and especially the ones he had in Calgary and Edmonton, where he had thousands and thousands and thousands of people out. And you may think, okay, big whoop, it's Calgary. Of course, there are a lot of conservatives. But Stephen Harper wasn't pulling those numbers. Pierre Poilievre was going into cities that Stephen Harper had rallies in an election when he was prime minister and was not getting the same turnout as him. So there are a lot of factors in that. There was a post-pandemic surge of just people wanting to get out and do things. But he brought in people that had not only never before been conservatives, but in many cases had never before been in politics. And I spoke to Ian Brody, a former University of Calgary professor in the book, and he had talked about how the conservatives have gone through every possible way of increasing their membership list in Edmonton, for example, and have just thought they had maxed out. And then Pierre Poilievre comes in and somehow conjures up new conservative members. So that doesn't happen without there being a movement that is bigger than a person and bigger than their campaign.
That was Andrew Lawton in particular commenting. I asked him about something he wrote in his book, K.O. Lawton wrote in the introduction, where he said, Stephen Harper led a party, Pierre Poilievre is leading a movement. Are we giving Poilievre more credit because he's the now and forgetting about the immense power that Stephen Harper had within the Conservative Party?
They both have strong grips on the party. What makes them different is, I agree exactly with what he said, that the numbers that he's polling, the people who don't normally get involved with politics, not the diehards that we see at all the things, he's polling people that don't ever get involved with politics. That's different. That's something I haven't seen in politics in a long time. And it's, those crowds, they just don't hoke up on their own. And they're very hard to do. We've all been involved in politics to see those numbers. Yes. They're very, very hard to do. So I think they're very similar in the fact they have a very tight grip on the party. But where the difference is that Poilievre is breaking through and actually getting into a class of folks and a group of people who have never seen themselves in politics, and they're motivated enough to go to a rally. And that's a lot of work to get someone to not just send an email or a comment, but actually go in person, go to a rally and likely
buy membership
and likely donate.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different time though. Stephen Harper didn't have to figure out how to use TikTok, right? And so I don't know how he would do in this day and age, because Pierre is an incredible communicator, and the Conservative Party has finally learned how to communicate with our generation in the world that we consume media, right? Like we talked about that housing video that they did. It was still 12 minutes, but even the branding on it, it's been incredible. So he knows the sound bites, he knows how to keep people interested, but he has this energy. And he also has timing. You know, we came out of a pandemic. It's inflation. There's a housing crisis. But he knows how to use that. You know, Cher had this empty net we talk about.
Timing's nothing if you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Exactly, right? Yeah. Like the Conservatives could have won with Cher if he didn't, whatever.
The empty net.
But the empty net. But, I mean, Pierre knows how to do something with it. And, the energy is there. I've seen him speak in person. He's not as there was maybe 60 people in the room. And he sounds a lot less chaotic when he's just one-on-one. He has that credibility. The people around him now, I'm not exactly sure, but I'll just leave it at that.
So something that came up in that interview with Lawton that I thought was interesting is he talks about how he is standoffish with the media. And maybe 15 years ago, when you didn't have the alternate channels that you could go through, you had to play nice with the media. You just had to. That was and not everyone did. Catherine's shaking her head.
I'll tell you, but I had to cover Harper back in the day, and he never played nice with the media.
Harper,
Harper, you would go to a presser, and there was 2 questions.
But he didn't need you.
No, I know, but I'm just saying there was never a great time when he ever played nice with the media either.
I think you had to play nicer. I think the
Yes.
fact in the Lawton
There's
interview,
degrees.
you talk about how he's not doing interviews. He's not taking meetings. He's been really clear that he is doing meetings with the people, so to speak. And I think if you've never been involved in politics and you catch a clip of an interview where this guy is not playing ball with the media, you might feel that reflects a little bit of your own cynicism or distrust.
No, but I mean, if you look at, sorry again to interrupt, that's all we do to each other though, is, Republicans, at least down in the States, I think the stats are upwards of 80% don't trust the media. And so you take a look at Pierre's base, and it almost might be a strategy too, right? They start to say negative things about him. Well, he doesn't respect the media anyway. Who trusts what the media says? It's a business model that's broken. They're just trying for headlines and clickbait. That's not true. Carry on to the next. I constantly am trying to tell my 14-year-old that this is what Trump does all the time. But you're setting yourself up to say, well, if I don't like what they say, I can just shush it to the side.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the thing, like that 12-minute sort of, I don't want to call it a documentary because it wasn't. It was a 12-minute video about affordability in housing. And I think, and I'd be interested to hear what Ryan has to say about this, but we went through this period where the shorter the clip, the better. And now it's actually going, like the longer the clip, the better. Like people will sit down and watch 10, 15, 20 minutes.
It kind of depends on what you're talking about, but you're right. Like, you talk to content creators, and then you've got kind of like you've got like a 7-second thing to be aware of. You've got a 60-second thing to be aware of. You've got clips under 2 minutes. On YouTube, there's even people want to have their videos to be 8 minutes and 1 second or more, so YouTube can insert 2 ads instead of 1. There's so many things to think about on the content side, but the strategy behind it, nothing is an accident. The runtime of a video is not an accident ever. I need to. The three of you don't have any context here, so I'll try to. But I want to just basically throw something into play and get out of the way. Lorraine here in the chat says, if Pierre Poilievre wins, say goodbye to women's rights. And Johnny and I, we do our best to stay in our lane. But the other day it came up and someone was, we had sort of a recurring comment in our live chat where someone was like, Poilievre's going to take away abortion rights. Poilievre's going to take away women's rights, whatever. And I said, like, as a person, but as a man, okay, so yeah, but I can't help that. So I put my opinion out there and then kind of left it. Basically that he's not indicated that that's a priority. He's gone on the record in support of women's health rights and a woman's right to choose. He's not talked to his caucus about it. He's not pushing it. And so I suggested that it could actually be a losing formula. And then I would take back the word I used. I said to create hysteria. I understand that can be like kind of a gender loaded word. That was not my intent, but like to get like all worked up and focused and like hyper sort of like laser beam onto the women's rights thing. We've seen that blow up in people's faces. Like most recently, I think the most recent Alberta provincial election, and a lot of times, but you guys are the campaign strategists. Campaign strategists will say, like, don't focus on the stuff that's not a real thing, because then you can lose credibility in the public eye, and then you come across as though you're making everything an issue when it's not. We got emails from people that were pretty upset about that quick exchange. In particular, upset about me saying, like, you think that he's going to announce his playbook? You think it's trustworthy? You think whatever? What do you guys think? Like, from a campaign strategy, from a public strategy, just all
He's already
things
come
considered.
out and said that he was pro-choice. Did he not?
I know,
He already
and
came out and said
that was what I was saying.
You can't
was like,
win as a conservative. Like, sure, maybe there's some Albertans or whatever, but in the GTA and where he needs to win, he has to be pro-choice. Like it's not you don't win on that. It's never come up. And
but people will say, what about Donald Trump? What about Roe v. Wade? What about?
But he's not Donald Trump, and this is not the United States of America. I just don't think that. No, I do not think that's
there's
just going to be a surprise that's
planned
going to pop out
in cities across North America on the second anniversary of Roe versus Wade this year. So there's going to be a march in Edmonton,
we need to hold
Calgary.
them to account.
So
the
stuff happening south of the border is moving up. And, while abortion, someone, I'm the CEO of the YWCA, so we watch this closely and we watch rights and make sure, always being a guardian and on these rights. And it's the access is the issue in Canada. And while he's pro-choice, he has MPs that are getting up in the House of Commons talking about abortion. And, he has tight control of that party. That's not by accident. There's no way that's just happening. So we watch it closely, and it doesn't matter what politician of any stripe. We are always trying to make sure that women's rights are adhered to and that our rights are guarded. And this it concerns me, and we're very vigilant. And it's really interesting to see this women's march start to develop. You're going to hear more about it. It's not being organized, but it's very grassroots right now. But I expect that it's going to be in every city across Canada on the 2nd anniversary, and very much connected not to just what happened in the south of the border, but what's happening north of the border.
I mean, so I think the same question came up with Stephen Harper. Make sure that you have him on the record. Stephen Harper, I think, said, I'm not going to force a vote in the House of Commons. I'm not going to make it a legislative priority. And he didn't, because that was on the record and people held him to that. But also, I agree with Jenny. I don't think it's a winning political strategy in Canada writ large, and specifically in the areas where you need to win seats to become prime minister in Canada, like the GTA or even urban Quebec.
Interestingly, though, this doesn't look like a squeaker election. And so maybe if it was tight like these last two, but this one doesn't look like it's shaping up to be that. So I think he has a bit more.
He's everything.
They have
to
a
lose.
lot.
He's everything.
He has a lot to lose, but I think they're gonna.
And I'm not going to pretend that in a conservative party that as a woman you don't feel like you're second to the men. Like I just really want to quickly say Danielle Smith at the International Women's Day event last year. She thanked blah, 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 blah. And then she said, and I'd like to thank so-and-so man in the room who is a mentor to me, because without the men in our lives, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I'm like, are you kidding me on International Women's Day? But that constant need to be, pandering to your base, to understand what people think and feel. It was just like, it makes you feel exactly where you stand.
Yeah. But so you are not incorrect, Catherine, but
oh, thanks.
Catherine's like, I knew that.
Like, I know.
Tastes like vinegar.
but
I don't know why you would lean into a very divisive issue like women's rights, like abortion,
put a target
or reproductive health, and put that target on your back when you have, in my opinion, the slam dunk of affordability and like the survival of the middle class in Canada, and you are owning that issue. The NDP have ceded their ground and the Liberals have lost ground on this. And I think one of the things that happens in politics is that you dislike someone on the other side of the aisle so much that you can't see the validity in the arguments they're making, or how attractive, I mean small a attractive, like how charismatic or compelling their argument is to regular people. And respectfully, when I hear, and I'm hearing this exchange as you've replayed it secondhand, that is not based on things that the Conservative Party has articulated or said, or Poilievre has said. I understand a fear, but it feels a little bit to me like, I dislike this guy so much, I'm going to throw what I can at him to make you dislike him.
Okay, there's a lot of talk about Danielle Smith in the live chat right now, and I do want to ask.
Good job, Jenny.
I do want to. Well, I mean, it's a nice segue actually. So, Johnny, we talked to Shannon Phillips, the finance critic, this week here on the show. If you've missed the interview, number one, she talks about her run-ins with the Lethbridge Police Service, and if you're not familiar with that story, I mean, remarkable commentary from her firsthand on this show. I mean, sitting in this chair, just giving us the straight goods on what that's been like. I haven't seen another interview like that in quite some time, so make sure you check it out. But obviously, as the spring session wraps, as the Alberta legislature, Rachel Notley is now finished as leader of the Alberta NDP. She's done her last lap, so to speak, and a career well fought in Alberta, to be sure. We asked MLA out of Lethbridge West, Shannon Phillips, for her assessment of Danielle Smith's UCP government through the spring session, and she did not hold back.
It is actually quite astounding, the extent to which they have just helped themselves to breaking the rules and convention of that legislature in order to ram things through quickly and shield them from any kind of democratic scrutiny or debate.
Isn't that kind of what majority governments do?
No. That's the thing. When you look at average time of debate for even the Kenney government, the New Democrats, the PCs before us, we were looking at 10, 12, sometimes 20, 30 hours of debate per bill. Some of these bills are getting 3 and 4. The point of having time for a bill before the legislature and the stages of debate, what we all learn in grade 6, right, as part of the provincial government unit, is that the public then has a chance to grapple with whatever the content is, because the system is opaque. You know, the rules of the legislature are 800 years old. They're like, normal people don't understand how it all works. And bills are difficult to read. So that's why you have stages of debate. You have a time when it goes to committee where the opposition can introduce amendments, where groups can make themselves heard. In some legislatures, committees are open public meetings, that stage, right? The point here is that the public and the affected parties can grapple with the material in a way that, you know, takes sometimes days or a few weeks. This is not that. It is frankly unprecedented in Alberta politics. It shows just an absolute disregard for the mandate and for the guardrails, the institution. And that's where I think we see that these are not conservatives at all. This is an entirely different approach because conservatives historically believe in the rule of law. They believe in institutions. They believe in stability. They believe in the power of local government. And that's not what these guys are doing. Not at all.
Not at all. Not conservatives.
Yeah.
That's Shannon Phillips on the May 29th episode of Real Talk.
Yeah, she was great. That was a great delivery. And I mean, she made really, really good points. But also, it's a lot of grandstanding, these debates. It's a lot of theater. It's a lot of, you know, I mean, are people actually watching and paying attention? Is the public, or is this just an opportunity for each party to yell back and forth? So I can't speak to what UCP was doing. I wasn't following along, but I'm sure they were trying to just, you know, actually get more things to happen. But I'm sure it was a strategy too. And I feel like there could have been a middle ground.
I thought it was pretty interesting that she says that the Alberta Premier, made famous in part for handing out earplugs in the legislature, did a better job of listening than the current Premier. When she said that, I kind of went, oh, wow. What do you make of the Danielle Smith not a conservative argument?
I'm first of all, I haven't seen a lot of Shannon Phillips interviews, and I haven't met her personally, but I thought that, I agree. I thought that was great delivery.
She was on fire.
Yeah, she was on fire. And as I'm watching that, it begs the question of why isn't she running for leader of the NDP?
Exactly.
But
she talked to that, by the way. She said to us, she said she didn't want any part of it.
Oh yeah, well, and I didn't watch the whole
blame her.
interview. Yeah. Anyway, I like.
Just say it, counselor.
Just
say it.
Sarah.
I think that there's a transformation happening in politics writ large. I think there's a transformation happening in conservative politics. And it's really hard to watch that. I have my own skepticism about what, you know, does or does not transpire in the legislature or in any governing body if you haven't seen it yourself, because you're seeing it through someone else's interpretation. But I also remember that they did like overnight sittings in the legislature. And I think when Danielle Smith became premier, it was a desire to see a slowing of pace. And I think that there's trade-offs to that. I would, in fairness, go back 10 or even 15 years and say, what was the debate time on bills that were tabled in 2010? When they weren't, like, Kenny was a very aggressive premier and he pushed a very aggressive legislative agenda.
Yeah, and he said he was going to do so. And Danielle Smith said the same thing too. Shovel Guy in the live chat says, do people actually watch? No, Jenny, that's why I elect somebody to represent me there.
Exactly.
You know, but I like, and I'll say this, like sort of a peek behind the curtain from like a talk show standpoint, where we want to make sure that nobody changes the channel or goes to listen to other podcasts. If we start doing a roundtable on debate times, we're going to lose everybody. No, but the bigger point is that, like, is the government listening? Are they preserving democracy? Like, if you look at the commentators, I'll note like Dr. Jared Wesley, political scientist who's been a good friend of this show, and others, like people are, and I'm not using the word, you know, as a pejorative, but like people are shrieking. People are screaming from rooftops. They're like, democracy is under attack in Alberta. The question is like, no, like with three people that I trust, who I know to be calm and measured and reasonable, in your estimation, like, is that a fair assessment?
But it's the same people who are shrieking all the time. And this is when you go back to the conversation earlier about fatigue, like and I'm gonna get in trouble for this, I'm sure.
Good.
But
It's about time.
Spit it out.
Well, no, I'm managing it. No.
Like, it's the same people who are constantly ringing the bell. Like this is so like, find me a commentator on Alberta politics who is like, this is why I like, Don Braid.
Of course you
because
can.
Don Braid will give
Measured.
credit when credit is due, but he'll also be like, whoa, like this is a problem. And so I read that. I think that's credible. But when you have the same people over and over again saying, like, the government's trying to take away your democratic rights, whether or not that's true, their message hasn't changed. It's the same on everything.
Yeah, and when you have a majority, you have a lot of leeway to be doing some of these things. And again, going back, I was in the press gallery in the legislature and covered the Klein government. I heard that I could play that clip from the Klein years. So I'm not saying that maybe the debates are a little shorter, et cetera, but when you have a majority, you have a lot more power and you can get things through faster.
That's what I said to her.
And
that's how they operate.
And that's what they were saying back in the day for that. So I'm not so sure, but let's take it back to the beginning of the conversation. I still think the way that politicians are behaving, the lack of media, democracy, and the lack of respect for rule of law writ large is concerning. And we're seeing it popping up, and we're all kind of like trying to make sense of it. And it's starting. We're coming out of a fog, and I'm really interested to see how this settles and where this ends.
Noob Try Again in the chat says, I am not shrieking all the time at all. This is a new phase, a new level of our democracy being undermined and attacked while given a pass. That from Noob Try Again. And Muddy Otter's Pottery says, it's the same people shrieking about Bill 20. Small town mayors, they're not the same people. That's a very good point. It's a fair point. I mean, Alberta municipalities, I mean, I don't have to tell a city councillor that Bills 18 and 20 have made a lot of noise.
And that's why we've seen changes, and that the fact that it's going to be retooled a bit. I think it should be retooled a lot more. I'll go on the record saying that, but you're seeing them responding because there is reaction to it, and that is democracy. That is democracy.
Yeah. But with the lack of media or someone to hold politicians accountable, especially in smaller communities where the radio stations are gone and the TV stations are gone and the newspapers are gone, conspiracy theorists or the small group of people who are angry take something and they run with it. I had one client who's like, we're trying to move the SPCA or and they think we're killing puppies. Like, that's the narrative that has taken and run. How do we redirect that? And that is such a massive problem in society today, that we don't have anyone we can trust holding politicians to account, or businesses or nonprofits, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot more room to get away with things.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to run out of time, and I refuse to run out of time without touching on smartphones in schools. Jenny, you have two boys of teenage vintage. I'm assuming, one high schooler, one junior high schooler?
Yeah, I've got one in grade 9,
and
he is at Vimy Ridge
in
the golf program. And I have one in grade 6 going into grade 7.
Okay, I didn't know if you wanted to say the school name.
It's fine, because that's the one school.
The school has just announced they're banning phones in school starting on Monday.
Yeah, so Vimy is banning schools. And it was in, sorry.
Phones,
they wish.
Kids would love it. And
the YEG Wave poll was so interesting to me. And we were also having a conversation in one of my, not you guys, I have other friends, group chat, about a school in our neighborhood who is also trying to, reduce technology. And you would think as a parent, like, I hate the fact that my kids have to have phones. I hate it. They have 2 houses, they have phones, it's fine. And the little one is obsessed with his phone. So you would think as a parent that it would just be like a shoo-in and like, yep, take away the phones. But there are a lot of parents, including at this school in our neighborhood, who were outraged. And after 1 month of trying a technology light day, 1 day a week, the parents and the students voted it down, and even took it so far. And there's a memo that went out from the principal. And if it's okay, Ryan, I'm going to read one line.
Yeah, dude. So to be clear, this is not from your school.
This is not from Vimy. This is like a couple months ago.
A school that will be unnamed.
In response to a comment received after last week's letter, this is not intended to impose my values on your family. Instead, this is an interesting conversation that has tangible impact. I hope that we can discuss this rather than argue about it. it is such a heated subject between parents and schools. Like, you're trying to control my kid. And I didn't even know that our kids were allowed phones in the classrooms.
My daughter doesn't even have a phone. So that's another. She's 13 and every day it's a debate.
And
so.
mine has to. But
she asks for it
every day. But I'm holding out as long as I can.
But Catherine and I are not the most engaged parents when it comes to schools. But I didn't know they were allowed their phones. So my son told me today in his Spanish class last year, or in grade 7, he could do 10 minutes of Spanish and then they were allowed to go on their phones for the rest of class.
No.
I had no idea that's what was happening. No. So I hope that this continues
what
to
does
go
go
the
on
way.
their phones
Just
mean?
like
to
sit
do,
in the back of the room and go on TikTok.
Do Wordle.
Do Wordle.
Like
Royale.
Or go and do all the clips.
I don't know that the kids do Wordle.
I would say
they might.
Jack does every night. He loves Wordle. We have the YW has been running a camp on Lake Wadman since 1916, and we have every summer 1,200 kids go, and there is a no phone zone, and so for a week, kids are detoxed off their phone, and we routinely hear back from parents and the kids positive feedback about that, because it helps that they're outside, they're doing fun things, but they come back different people. And I think it shows us that we have to get a grip on this. And, schools should be, do you remember being in classrooms where I wasn't even allowed to have a calculator, let alone a phone?
Yeah. When you have giant classrooms.
If you have a big classroom, but I think schools have to be, and I hope they just do it all across the board. Like, if this patchwork rules is not helpful,
but
because
you can hear the outrage from parents.
Yeah, but you gotta say who's in honestly,
There was a time where, and my son is too small, although he's like, you have a young kid, they learn to use the technology so fast. It's terrifying. So this isn't a live concern in our household, but as a parent, it is because if you spend too much, and I think all of us have that experience, you spend too much time on your phone and your kids notice. If you sit down and you just kind of like do that thing where you just endlessly scroll, they are vying for your attention. And I'm conscious increasingly that we are teaching them that our attention is better spent on in this space than with them. And I think to Catherine's point, and maybe back to that education setting, like, part of the issue in education is to teach you how to discern the information that comes into the world, and to teach you how to form connections with real people. And if we go back to the top of the hour and the conversation we've been having, one of the issues that I think is so concerning is that we are losing the ability to form real, tangible, terrestrial connections with other people. And the people who are doing it so well are the people that we are terrified of having that power. Like, whether it's Donald Trump or if it's Pierre Poilievre, they are so good at making those real connections with people, and the rest of us are like we don't have it.
I think if you flip the script to the States, it's like a totally different story. Voice of America did a poll last month. So 77% of schools in the U.S., high schools, prohibit the use of cell phones.
4 out of 5.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. So, but they said only about 20% of them enforce it, and none of the kids are listening. But like in the States, if there's a school shooting, I don't have a kid, but I would want them to have a phone on them, right?
I mean, I didn't even think of that, but 100%. What about this from Glenna in the chat? Says, my granddaughter was bullied all through high school. Her phone was her lifeline to home. In today's world, it could be a necessity. That from Glenna.
But on the flip side, you have the phones, and the online bullying is happening in the classrooms in the moment while the kids are supposed to be learning.
100%.
You take a look, there's a lot of Ontario school boards that are now suing Meta, Facebook, Instagram, because of the mental health implications. And so we might start to see that as well, too.
And I want to give a shout out to my buddy Steve at Wednesday Hockey, who made the exact point in the locker room that you just made. And he says that, as he referenced the Ontario development, that story there, and he said, you're suing these tech giants. Well, the tech giants are going to look and say, well, you didn't ban the phones from schools, so how are we liable? Right? So it's one of those sort of like horse cart situations, right?
Exactly.
I understand that and I think, to Jenny's point, parents having access to their children throughout the school day, I can understand that that's important, but I think it misses the bigger issue, which is that bullying policies are inadequate to deal with bullying. They were when I was in high school, and they are today.
KO, in closing.
Yep.
You're off to Toronto.
Yes.
For the Canadian Vote Summit
Yes.
2024. People can check out engagedemocracy.ca.
Yeah.
You're a keynote there? Or you're hosting?
I'm
What's going on?
moderating a panel, but I'm also serving on the advisory committee for this summit. So yeah, it's really exciting.
What's it all about?
So it's being hosted by Metropolitan University, so the old Ryerson, and it's a democracy think tank that holds its annual gathering of policymakers, pollsters, academics, students, everyone who's concerned about democracy and kind of all of these things that we've just been talking about, and pulling people together to kind of figure out solutions, not just talking about the challenges that we're having around the world right now, but what could be real solutions. So these conversations are really important because it is a real threat. And there's a stat right now, this year, half of the world right now is going to the polls this year. It's the biggest year of elections on the planet.
Wow.
And at no time have we ever felt that democracy was at a threat like this. So yeah, I'm heading there next week. The chief electoral officer is going to be there. The editor-in-chief of the Toronto Star, David Frum. Yeah, he's a keynote. Nenshi is a keynote. Yeah. So it's a really interesting summit. Really excited. I'm going on behalf of the YWCA Edmonton. We've been doing a lot of engagement to try to get more people into politics, and it's important to have civil society doing the work too. And Senator Paula Simons always says that we're guardians and gardeners of democracy, and we all have a role to play. And I hope that people just don't think your role is to vote. Every day, be deliberate when you are in your community and trying to make sure that our democracy is not only tended to, but protected.
That's Katherine O'Neill, who's former Globe and Mail journalist, the CEO of the YWCA of Edmonton. Hanging out right next to her around the Real Talk Roundtable is Edmonton City Councillor Sarah Hamilton and Jenny Adams, the president of the Adams Agency, rounding out our group chat roundtable. I love this from Travis, who says, the chat is spicy AF today. If popcorn was breakfast food, I'd be going to town on a bowl. We don't judge you for what you eat for breakfast, Trav. You go ahead and help yourself. Thanks to the three of you for delivering, as always, a great conversation. And to you, Real Talkers, checking in that live chat. Those of you that are listening to the live streaming audio on the Mixler closets, and you know where to find us. Our inbox always open at talk@ryanjesperson.com. That's where we're going in just a second for the Flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. But I know you guys got to take off, so you're more than welcome to do so. Have an amazing day. Thanks for doing this again. These conversations made possible by supporters of Real Talk, including the team at Friesen Brothers. If you, hang on a second, KO, you can keep the music bed going, Johnny. What's this book you just put in front of me? Johnny, I'd like to keep the music going. We need more music beds on the show.
It's so fun. When I moved to Alberta in 2004, I was working in the Toronto Press Gallery at the time for the Toronto City Hall, and this reporter slips me this book. And he's like, I'm from Alberta. I helped write this book back in the early 80s. It's called
Running on Empty, Alberta After the Boom.
And so, I mean, how many boom and busts have we been through? So it is such a fascinating read. Sheila Pratt
1987, Andrew Nikiforuk.
Yeah, so it's awesome. And it really was, my primer when I arrived in 2004 to what politics was like in Alberta and that bust boom mentality. So highly recommend it. I doubt you can find it anywhere. I think there's just copies.
Okay,
physical copies. So do not lose it.
I just got chills. Do you know why?
Why?
Because somebody gave you this book, right? And I'm flipping through this right now, and I open to this page, and what is underlined and handwritten there?
The Lougheed Legacy.
The book, The Lougheed Legacy. Do you remember the last book you gave me, KO?
Yep.
It was The Lougheed Legacy.
Yes.
What is going on right now?
Yeah. So enjoy.
This is Matrix. This is Matrix stuff.
I want a book report.
Okay. Am I reading this? Did I just get a sign reading?
I'm sign reading.
All right. Running on Empty, Alberta After the Boom. I love it. Thanks, KO. The group chat roundtable. This is real life stuff, my friends. Friesen.com. That's FRESON.com is where you can check out more about Friesen Brothers garden centers. If you're going to be on your hands and knees getting those annuals in, maybe plant some new perennials, maybe it's shrubs, cedar shake, whatever you're doing. Friesen Brothers has something cool going on at their garden centers. The majority of their plants, the majority of everything you're going to find in there, even the potting soil, is actually from Alberta, which means it's a great fit for Alberta's climate. You can watch this super cool video. Meet the team behind the Meadowbrook Greenhouse, one of the Friesen suppliers. Again, that's Friesen.com/garden center. Our friends at Complete Care Restoration want to remind you that if disaster strikes, if your community is impacted by wildfire, Maybe it's flood. Maybe it's a sewer backup. Maybe it's what you thought was going to be a small renovation project. Take out a couple of walls, and all of a sudden you found black mold in there. Maybe it's an asbestos type scenario. Leave it to the talented and trained certified professionals at Complete Care Restoration. More than a quarter century of experience restoring your property and rebuilding your peace of mind. You can contact them today. Keep their name in mind. That's CompleteCareRestoration.ca. And at PathwaysAlliance.ca, you can learn more about the carbon capture and storage project that's planned. It's being worked on right now by the 6 biggest producers in Alberta's oil sands, working in partnership with provincial and federal governments on a path to reach net zero from operations. They know that global energy demands are changing. Everybody knows that. The world wants responsibly produced energy, and Alberta can provide it. They've got to collaborate to reach that goal. You can learn about that net zero initiative. Again, the website, pathwaysalliance.ca. We could invoke more music beds, I think. Just talking about that book report I was just assigned.
I'm all about the music, bro. So yeah, if you want to add some more
music beds, you think about how many people would spend less time watching sports highlights if there wasn't like that driving guitar beat under the sports highlights.
If you want,
right?
I could just break it down. Whenever you're making a point, I could just be like,
I like that.
Just
you could
get in.
Yeah, love that from Ms. B. Says great roundtable real talk. Great roundtable. I love it. You know, when we bring the group chat roundtable in, it's like obviously they have credibility, they have experience in their fields, but also they kind of shoot from the hip. And I love the dynamic of those three, and I love how it lands with you, real talkers, as well. I was kind of interested though, like when Jenny's talking about her girlfriend's kids' school. So we hear that letter, that email from the principal.
Sure.
We're not saying what school it was, but the principal's basically facing a barrage of criticism from parents who are choked they're choked about the phones being pulled.
Sure.
Or it was Wi-Fi free Wednesday in that circumstance. Kind of interesting because, you know, earlier this week we talked to a pollster who says that 80% of Canadian parents think it's a good idea to pull phones from schools. So it's almost like the polling and then in practice is not the same thing.
I think the best scenario is just have a rule where like it can't be out, because like your phone is your lifeline these days. A lot of kids, they use like apps to keep them calm. They use reminders to tell them to take medication. Like I mentioned, if an emergency happens in a school, do you want to be able to call your kid and see where they're at in the school? This is a big no-win arguing about it, but I do understand that teachers are kind of at the mercy of kids' cell phones these days. They're trying to teach, they're trying to keep them to pay attention. Kids have got ADHD, they've got all these things going on around them. You just want them to get through the class, and for God's sakes, teachers are just trying to get you to get a good education and graduate. That's their whole focus. I get that, but at the same time, it's got to be on their hip. I mean, it's everyone's lifeline these days, even if you're 12, 13 years old.
Yeah. I hadn't even thought about the school shooter thing until you brought
that was
that
the
up.
biggest one.
Isn't that brutal that like in the U.S. that's something that they're actually thinking, okay. Well, I mean,
like in Canada, it's different. We don't have that kind of thing on our mind all the time. For the most part. But in the States, it's an absolute, you've got, like I said, 77% of schools trying to enforce it. 20% of them actually try to enforce it. But the poll was laughing because it said, none of these kids are listening. They've all got their phones in their pockets. You know, it's a way for parents to have instant communication with their kid. As a parent, because I'm not you, I mean, I know Wyatt's coming of age. He's going to have a phone on him soon, in a few years here. You want to be able to instantly say, hey, bud, how's your day going? Or where are you at? Or I'll be outside in 5 minutes, whatever. Like, you wouldn't want his phone taken away or put in a basket for the duration of the class.
But I also relate to Catherine talking about, you know, her daughter's 13. She doesn't have a phone yet. You know, our little guy's turning 9 this summer. He's already like, when do I get a phone? He's like, some of my friends have phones. I'm like, some of your friends have phones?
I say Wyatt because he's intuitive. He's a creative.
Smart
I
kid,
know as soon as he gets a phone, he's going to be like graphic designing on it.
He's already wants his own YouTube channel, so it's probably going to like smoke our subscriber list in the first 6 months. Every week, courtesy of our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, that's Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, Baseline Road. We ask you to bring the heat, real talkers. It's over to you right now. Your hot takes as submitted into our email inbox. It's the Flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. And Cher writes in, after my conversation with Andrew Lawton about Pierre Poilievre, she says, we talked about the Freedom Convoy as well. She says, I wanted to talk to you about lasting fallout, Jespo, from that Freedom Convoy. I can no longer fly the Canadian flag on my property because it no longer has the same meaning to me, and I worry that it might be misconstrued. Cher says, I get an uncomfortable feeling when I see the Canadian flag right now. I even see trucks flying Oilers flags through the playoffs, and I feel anger and sadness because I already know why they have permanent flagpoles installed on the backs of their trucks. I mentioned this to a friend the other day. She had the same reaction. Nice to know I'm not alone, I guess. We feel robbed of something that was once a symbol of pride in our country. That's the legacy of the Freedom Convoy on me and I guess others. Peace out. That from Cher. What about this one from Tobias, who writes in and he says, the driver that caused the Humboldt crash Jaskaret sings to do does need to be deported, Ryan. He did the crime and he needs to go. He's not sorry for what he did. That's bullshit. He says he's only sorry because he got caught. What? He didn't even bother to stop. So yeah, he did it on purpose. Ridiculous. Jeez. He says this human I just want to show that, like, sometimes we're going to give alternative views of position on the Flamethrower, right? But this is straight up horse shit. Anyway, back to Tobias's email. He says he needs to go, never come back. It's pathetic he gets to stay here while the victims' families continuously have to suffer with him still in the country. All right, Tobias. This one from Garth, who titles it Flop Adler. Adler did a 180 on the Humboldt story, as heard 5 episodes ago, 4 previous to this one, if you're looking in our archives. Garth says, after listening to Adler about the trucker involved in the Humboldt crash, I found myself reflecting on his inconsistency. As I listened, I began to examine my own feelings, which brought me back to a place, says Garth, I haven't visited in almost 35 years. And this is brutal. He says, I lost my dad in a car crash when I was just a year old. Ooh. By the time I was 4, I knew that the man who hit my dad on his motorcycle was well connected in a corrupt nation, our nation of Jamaica at the time, managed to avoid facing the full consequence of his reckless driving. So as a kid, whenever I felt sad, I'd run to a corner, cry, and I'd scream about how I wanted to kill the man who killed my father. And this deeply troubled my mom and my grandma, and I later found out the man responsible for my dad's death was the son of my grandmother's friend, and it took me many years to rid myself of the anger, the temper that it brought out in me. So hearing you and Adler talk about this, I decided to listen and truly try to connect with what you were saying. Brought back a lot of emotions. I think laws are in place to help bring balance, closure even, in horrific situations. The man who killed my dad should have faced the full consequences, but didn't. He says, this disturbed me as a child, disturbs me now. As an immigrant myself, says Garth, if I were still a permanent resident and contravened Canada's criminal code, I would expect to bear the full extent of immigration laws. I wish the trucker all the best, but justice must proceed. Families must be given space under the law to find closure. Healing may come easier for those who have forgiven and moved on, but for those who haven't, it takes time, and justice can help them get there. Garth, I appreciate your email, and I'm sorry for your loss. What about this one from Commish Daddy, who said, Jesperson, all this talk about defining the middle class, that episode you did with Margaret Chapman, the pollster I mentioned earlier, he said, I'm over this narrative around the middle class. Like, where did this phrase even come from? I'm reminded of the comic where the advisor to the king tells him he just needs to tell the people with pitchforks that the people with torches are coming for your pitchforks. Politicians, all heavily backed by fat corporate class cash, love to pander to this fake middle class, whipping up fake culture wars against other classes of workers so the wealth keeps flowing from all the workers to the wealthiest in the land. And I'm not letting pollsters off the hook here. Their questions, their reports keep feeding the fairy tale of this middle class. They find people that fit the story, remove people that don't. I don't know about that. And then media picks it up and beats it to the brains of the population. You're middle class. If something improves the lives of somebody who's in a lower class, it's going to cost you. Well, guess what, middle class suckers? You're getting hosed, and not by immigrants or unions or universities or the LGBTQ2S+ community or a windmill or a price on carbon or whatever BS is being fed to you that isn't a titling of the wealth distribution scale from the elite to the working class. There are 2 classes, the elites that are getting richer and the working class that's funding it. There's no middle class. And instead of wondering how we're going to pay for the fake lower class programs by the middle class, working class needs to start voting en masse for working class politicians ready to take take on the elites and not fall for their fake threats. That from Commish Daddy. Kind of sounds like what Gil McGowan brought to the table when he was running for NDP leadership. And this one from Nathan, who wraps us up, subject line, hot take Danielle Zabub, which will be funny to the churchgoers out there. He says ventriloquists globally should reach out to David Parker from Take Back Alberta since he did the impossible. He managed to get Alberta's premier, the marionette, elected. It's clear she doesn't believe in local government or other institutions after her blatant power grab. And he says limiting debate, just like Shannon Phillips was talking about, that's what I would expect in China, not a democratic government in Canada. It makes sense the UCP doesn't respect institutions, given one of their backers, David Parker himself, attacked Elections Alberta itself, accusing it of corruption after he was subpoenaed for not giving them his list of donors after registering as a third-party advertiser. Meantime, if the feds tried something similar to what the UCP is doing in Alberta, the entire damn province would be screaming foul. The hypocrisy is showing, says Nathan. Peter Lougheed, who's rolling in his grave at the state of conservative politics in Alberta. That from Nathan. You can fire up your flamethrower at talk@ryanjesperson.com. Presented every week on Real Talk by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Make it a great weekend, everybody. Keep it between the lines, and we'll see you right back here live on Monday morning.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hicks. General manager Katie Cook-Chivers. Account coordinator Lawrence Derlego. Human resources Lena Shepard. Website design Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Katherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.